The Animorphs book series is one of the greatest pieces of anti-war propaganda ever produced, and it's written for children. If you're not a millennial who remembers the Scholastic book fairs, you probably do know the meme of teenagers slowly turning into animals and the absolute absurdity of the in-between CGI shots. But the people who actually read these books remember some of the craziest anti-war shit you've ever read, and it was for little kids. The series is about 6 children who meet a dying alien who gives them the ability to turn into animals that they touch for 2 hours, and they are fighting a guerrilla war against another set of aliens that has been slowly body-snatching away the Earth. These kids go on to do so many war crimes, and I'm not being hyperbolic. I mean, like, war crimes. And they discuss what they're doing and the impact of it and how they have to do it because they're fighting a guerrilla war. At one point, they figure out that when the aliens slither out of people's ears into their giant yerk pool, that if they pour oatmeal in it, it'll kill them all. And then they debate whether or not the civilian casualties are worth the gains that they'll get for taking out such a large army. These children interrupt their zany animal shape-shifting adventures to discuss the ethics of committing oatmeal-based genocide on their opponents. At the end of the series, these kids go to a home for disabled children, and they offer these kids the chance at a cure by giving them the power to shapeshift into animals. Only if they do this, they have to join their guerrilla war. And there's a scene where all these disabled kids animorph for the first time, and only some of them are cured because the powers only cure you if you don't have a genetic-based condition. So then some of these kids have to deal with the fact that they're still disabled while all their other buddies go and fight in a guerrilla war. And they don't live, by the way. The final battle of this series isn't defeating the army. They're holding off long enough for a different alien army to notice them at all. And all these disabled kids shapeshift into rhinos and get blown to smithereens. It is so depressing. It is so out of pocket for a children's series. And all the main kids, by the way, they die. The one that loves fighting the most, Rachel, she gets sent on a suicide mission, and that causes the one that was trapped as a hawk the entire series to go feral. And then the other 4 kids get on an alien spaceship and fly off and get into a different conflict, and it's just implied that they died. Because there are no winners in war. This series was so brutal in their depiction of just how pointless and how ugly war is. And it's written for children before 9/11. I found that out this week. In my head, I read those books as a teenager, and they were disassembling of all of the post 9/11 rah-rah war shit. And here was a series being okay, let's pump the brakes. Well, I was doing research for my own book this week, because I'm writing a book about that war I was in, and I figured I'd, examine all the propaganda I was consuming before I went. I realized that these books, all 64 of these books, came out in a 5-year span between 1996 and May of 2001. They came out right before 9/11. This woman wrote a series about child soldiers in a guerrilla war that was so anti the propaganda that we were all about to consume 6 months before we went and took our youngest soldiers yet and sent them to our longest war. This woman is a prophet. K.A. Applegate. Catherine Applegate. And this isn't the only anti-war series she's written, by the way. She went on to write an even more messed up one after this that's for even older kids. It's just insane to me. It's insane to me that this woman had the prescience in the 90s to be I'm going to warn kids. I'm going to warn kids about war, and I'm going to do it with a bunch of shape-shifting animal shenanigans, because that'll draw them in. And they won't even realize they're reading anti-war propaganda. It is propaganda, by the way. Propaganda isn't just bad things the government says. Propaganda is any information with a political, bent to it that you are expressing to the masses. If you're trying to get people to believe something of a political persuasion, good or ill, that's propaganda, baby. You can have pro and anti-war propaganda. These books are a really good example of anti-war propaganda. There's one part of the series where they recruit a 7th kid whose entire family gets killed into their little guerrilla war, but that kid doesn't want to play by the same rules. So they trap him as a rat. They get him to shapeshift into a rat, and then they trap him like that, and they put him on a garbage island, and they just exile him there for a really long time until he comes back later in the series, and he's not happy about that. At one point, you meet basically God, and then you find out that God is playing chess with the devil, and that these 6 kids are the pawns, and that their entire guerrilla war is just the machinations of beings far beyond their comprehension. You know, like that thing we were about to embark upon in America, where a bunch of boys died because some men decided to. And like, sure, most wars are kind of the same. You know, Fallout's been saying that for a while. But like it's just this woman who's never been and never was a part of it so perfectly captured everything that we were about to do as a country. Like the only person I could even compare it to is like George Lucas, who was also desperately trying to warn us through children's media. Unfortunately, I did not heed those lessons, even though both Star Wars and Animorphs were like one of my favorite things growing up. But all the other propaganda I was consuming far outweighed those 2 properties. Drink it in. These weird faces have saved more children from war than we will ever be able to measure.